Bless you all. God bless you all. Short, you said. Well, okay. Well, in Jeremy's honour, actually, I'm going to do an old story of mine, of which I believe you're quite fond. And I should say, perhaps, for what's worth everybody's interested, that it is fundamentally set in New Brighton, as New Brighton was more in the 60s, I think. I mean, it's not actually called New Brighton simply because the geography isn't quite as it was, but close enough. And certainly the thing about the two fairgrounds was for sure true. And that's all I really need to say. The story itself is called The Companion. When Stone reached the fairground, having been misdirected twice, he thought it looked more like a gigantic amusement arcade. A couple of paper cups tumbled and rattled on the shore beneath the promenade, and the cold, insinuating October wind scooped the Mersey across the slabs of red rock that formed the beach, across the broken bottles and abandoned tyres. Beneath the stuffy white mock turrets of the long fairground facade, shops displayed souvenirs and fish and chips. Among them in the fairground entrances, scraps of paper whirled. Stone always walked away. This wasn't his best holiday. One fairground in Wales was been closed, and this one certainly wasn't what he'd expected. The guidebook had made it sound like a genuine fairground. Sideshows, you must stride among not looking in case the barkers lured you in. The sudden shock of waterfalls cascading down on what looked like painted cardboard. The shots and bells and wooden concussions of target galleries. The girls' shrieks overhead. The slippery armour and juicy crunch of toffee apples. The illuminations springing alight against the darkening sky. But at least he thought he'd chosen his time well. If he went in now, he might have had the fairground almost to himself. As he reached an entrance, he saw his mother eating fish and chips from a paper tray. Nonsense, she would never have eaten standing up in public, like a horse, as she used to say. But he watched as she hurried out of the shop, face averted from him and the wind. Of course, it had been the way she ate, with little snatching motions of a fork and mouth. He pushed the incident to the side of his mind in the hope that it would fall away, and hurried through the entrance into the clamour of colour and noise. The high roof with its bare iron girders reminded him at once of a railway station, but the place was noisier still. The uproar, the echoing sirens and jets and dangerous groaning of metal was trapped and was deafening. It was so overwhelming that he had to remind himself he could see, even if he couldn't hear. But there wasn't much to see. The machines looked faded and dusty. Cars like huge armchairs were lurching and spinning helplessly along a switchback. A canvas canopy was closing over an endless parade of seats. A great disc tasseled with seats was lifting towards the roof, dangling a lone couple over its gears. With so few people inside, it seemed almost that the machines, frustrated by inaction, were operating themselves. For a moment, Stone had the impression of being shut in a dusty room where the toys, as in childhood tales, had come to life. He shrugged vaguely and turned to leave. Just he could drive to the fairground at Southport, that was a good few miles across the Mersey. His holiday was dwindling rapidly. He might have had a man to go to the tax office in his absence, slower than usual, no doubt. Then he saw the roundabout. It was like a toy forgotten by another child and left here or handed down the generations. Beneath its ornate scrolled canopy, the horses rolled on poles toward the reflections of a ring of mirrors. The horses were white wood, or wood painted white, their bodies dappled with purple, red and green, and some of their sketched faces too. On the hub, above a notice made in Amsterdam, an organ piped to itself. "Oh yes," Stone said. "Can you pay me?" said the proprietor. "My boy's gone for a minute." The man's hair was the colour of the smoke from his pipe. His lips puckered on the stem and smiled. "It's a good roundabout," Stone said. "You know about them, do you?" "Well, a little." The man looked disappointed and Stone hurried on. "I know a lot of fairgrounds. They're my holiday, you see, every year. Every year I cover a different area. I may write a book." The idea had occasionally tempted him, but he hadn't taken notes, and he'd still had 10 years to retirement. "You go along every year?" "It has its merits. Less expensive for one thing. Helps me save. Before I retire, I mean to see Disneyland in Vienna." He thought of the big wheel, Harry Lime, the earth falling away beneath. "I'll get on," he said. He patted the unyielding shoulders of the horse and remembered a childhood friend who had a rocking horse in his bedroom. Stone had ridden it a few times, more and more wildly, when it was nearly time to go home. His friend's bedroom was brighter than his. As he clung to the wooden shoulders, he was clutching the friendly room too. Funny thinking of that now, he thought, because I haven't been on a roundabout for years, I suppose.